There's too many people that say there's no proof of the Bible. Well, there's plenty of proof. Check out these.
If the Bible was nothing but a book of myths, talking about people who never lived and events that never occurred, places that never existed, there'd be no such thing as biblical archaeology because there would be nothing found that correlated with the Bible stories. But in fact, the opposite is the case.
The Bible is the most historically accurate book ever penned. Hundreds of ancient discoveries verify its accuracy, and here's a list of 9.
Have you ever wondered why we have the books that we do in our Bibles?
Can we trust the New Testament as a reliable document?
His team found 2 human-headed winged bulls on either side of it.
So these winged bulls were on either side from the central court, looking down to the Lachish room in Sennacherib's palace in Nineveh.
Stone relief showing an Assyrian king sitting on a throne on top of a hill, watching the battle for the city. Above and to the left of the enthroned king was a short cuneiform inscription that solved the mystery. So now it was known with certainty, with the finding and translation of this inscription and other inscriptions found in this excavation, it was known with certainty that the ruins across the Tigris River from Mosul, this was Nineveh.
We're here at the Temple of Marduk in Babylon, and one thing that I wanted to show you is as we go here, you can see these are all wild animal tracks that are just zigzagging all across this ancient site. And this huge area, because it's abandoned, of course, it's just wild animals are living all over the place here. And you can just see where their tracks are just going all over the place here. And we saw some of them last night. This place is infested with wild animals. A den, some dens up on the side of the hill up here from where all these animals live.
Imagine what it must have been like at the height of its glory. And all of those temples and palaces have been reduced to almost nothing. I mean, I have never been anywhere that once was so great, was so much, that over time has been reduced to so little. The ziggurat, the towering ziggurat of Babylon, the Temple of Marduk, where the golden image of Marduk was enthroned. What dwells in those places today? Foxes, owls, jackals, hyenas, wolves. That is literally true. And honestly, it put the fear of the Lord in me. Everything that God spoke through his prophets, that he said from the ancient past was going to happen to Babylon in the future, all of that has been fulfilled. And Babylon today, though it might not look like much because it is a desolation, because it is infested with wild animals, what it is a testimony to the authority of Scripture, to the reality that God sits enthroned over all of human history. And what he says is going to happen in the future happens. And we can rest assured that since everything that in our past has been fulfilled, that everything that is still yet to be fulfilled in our future, we can rest assured it's going to happen precisely as God says that it will. These areas where the Dead Sea waters have receded, and this is when I started finding sulfur balls.
Just to give you an idea of how many sulfur balls there are. So where are these sulfur balls coming from? They're coming from this geological formation. You can see sulfur balls, what is called in situ, in place. They're placed right here in this particular layer.
Archaeologist Stuart McAllister began excavating at Gezer. On the Acropolis of the site, McAllister noticed that there was a row of stones whose tops were protruding through the ground. And so he began excavating the area and unearthed 12 standing stones in a row. And next to them was another huge stone with a flat top and a basin carved into it.
1,000-year-old coin, silver, minted in Tyre. Why Tyre? Because the Phoenicians were helping their Jewish friends, as there were no way for Jews to mint coins due to the time when they were submitted under the Romans. Now Jesus, when he comes to Jerusalem, we need to understand Jesus actually brings in his pocket this kind of coin, because this is the money you take from the money changers in the Temple Mount. The story is so remarkable.
Here are the facts. We have archaeological discovery at Monash of these massive metal spearheads and body armor. We have a parallel of the huge spearhead found also at Megiddo. We also have a parallel of the body armor found at Monash, found at Tel Gath. We have a match. That's why I interpret this as evidence for biblical giants.
I've come a very long way to see this inscription, which from the Egyptian hieroglyphics reads, "Land of the nomads of Yahweh." It dates to the end of the 15th century BC. It's over 3,400 years old, and that makes it the oldest mention in an inscription of the name of the God of Israel.
It starts with a simple cross, a very early version of the cross, followed by two Greek words, all of them in uppercase Greek letters. The first word is a name, and it's translated Jesus. The second Greek word is translated present. So this inscription is translated Jesus is present.
So what Balaam, son of Beor, is saying is that the most important thing about these people camped down below here is that not now, not near, but in the future, from them will come the God King. From them will come the divine King. Israelites believed in only one star. They had only one star. Besides their God, there was no other God. And so the concept of a star coming out of Jacob meant that Yahweh himself was going to come out of Jacob. He was going to become an Israelite.
This explains why there are so many stars found in the Jewish archaeological context. The star on this Israelite handle is dated to the 7th century BC. This star-stamped handle from Jerusalem is from the 2nd century BC, when stars are also commonly found on Jewish coins. Stars are also commonly found in the decorations of synagogues.
So according to this prophecy, then who is the star? What does the star represent? The star represents the coming Messiah. Where does this come from? It comes from the Torah itself, the book of Numbers. And that's when scholars realized, oh, this might be a Judeo-Christian synagogue.
Meaning that the Jews that had built this building and used it as a place of assembly were Jews who followed Jesus as their Messiah.
Here's something that's interesting. The mosasaur that they used in Jurassic World, only about 40 feet long in real life, even though theirs was 100 feet long, slight exaggeration, no problem, Mr. Spielberg is allowed to do that. When they find mosasaur like this one, it's incredibly well preserved. It's definitely one that swam in water. I mean, it had 4 flippers, for crying out loud, so it had to swim in water. And where do you think they find this guy normally? If you read the sign, you'll find out they find these fossils in the middle of Kansas. What in the world is a mosasaur doing in the middle of Kansas? Oh, yeah. For all you 7th graders, Kansas is in the middle of the United States. It's not close to the beach. Why do we find the mosasaur in Kansas? Figure that one out for me, huh?
Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of mud brick walls, which had been supported by a stone retaining wall. These mud brick walls had fallen outward and created a ramp of sorts up into the city. This evidence is what we'd expect to find after reading the Joshua 6 accounts. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat. so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. Excavations here have revealed abundant evidence that this city was indeed destroyed by a huge and purposeful fire. In fact, a layer of ashes exists over 3 feet thick that you can clearly see in this area behind me.
And they looked at me and they said, Mr. Wyatt, this human blood only has 24 chromosomes in it. Everybody else has 46. You see, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father, 22 autosomes from your mother, 22 autosomes from your father. You get an X from your mother, you may get an X or Y from your father, all right? This blood had 23 chromosomes from the mother's side, 1 Y chromosome only. You see, the child could not have developed if they hadn't had the autosomes from the mother. So all of his physical characteristics were determined by his mother's side of the family, her autosomes. His maleness was determined by this 1 Y that came from the source, not a human male. Then they said, this blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this? I said, it's the blood of your Messiah.
We can't list every animal, but we've got things from the various bird kinds to the elephant kind, from the various dinosaur kinds to the smallest mammal kinds, and so on and so on and so on. So you take all the young adult animals, because nothing says the animals had to be the oldest and biggest, and you look at all the various sizes we know of today, even from the fossil record, and you do some calculating, you come to the conclusion that the average size of the land animal is actually smaller than a sheep. But let's just use a sheep as the average size for the sake of argument. So now we got the size of the average animal, a sheep, and we have the maximum number of sheep, 30,000. So are we going to need a bigger boat? Well, let's see how big it really was, and if 30,000 sheep could fit on it. Back to the Bible. Genesis 6:15. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Genesis 6:16. You shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it to a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in its side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. Using what's known as the small cubit, that makes the ark approximately 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and about 45 feet high, with 3 decks, a door, and a window. So this ain't no canoe or a bathtub boat with giraffe heads poking out of it. This is a huge seaworthy vessel. The total available floor space on the ark would have been over 100,000 square feet. The total cubic volume would have been 1,518,000 cubic feet, which is about the capacity of 522 railroad stock cars. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, folks. How many sheep can fit into 522 stock cars? Well, just so happens I know the answer. The average double-deck railroad stock car can fit about 240 sheep. Now that's a lot of wool. So 522 stock cars holding 240 sheep-sized animals each gives us the hefty total of 125,280 sheep-sized creatures that could have fit onto the ark. Remember, we only needed to fit 30,000 on it, and 30,000 is almost 2 times the already generous estimate of animals necessary to represent all the species we see today. So it's easy to see that with more realistic numbers, there was plenty of room for cages, food, and even fresh water for the duration of the year-long stay that these animals had to be on the ark. And you know what? Ark researchers have studied this too, and I'll let you look that up.
There's a Savior born of a virgin, born in a manger or cave, ministered by angels, had 12 disciples, performed miracles, died on a cross, resurrected from the dead 3 days later, and his followers even called him the Good Shepherd to save him until he was born. Now come on. Does any of this sound anything like Jesus' actual death on a cross and bodily resurrection from the grave that was seen by a multitude of eyewitnesses, confirmed by the Roman government, and verified by historians throughout time? The parts that have parallels to Christianity actually came after Christ, somewhere in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. They borrowed from the historical Christian events and added them to their stories, not the other way around. Dig into it, see for yourself.